someone that is on a similar mission in life. So it's no surprise that we decided to join forces. This is Josh Frank. You own Consequence of Habit, which is a 501c3 charitable organization.
Mm-hmm. You know, when we decide we're going to do something, you make a contract with yourself, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And when we don't follow through, like, that's a vote.
If you have high aspirations or a different vision of who you should be as compared to who you are now, you have to audit your circle.
You know something needs to change in your life. Don't worry about anything other than today.
Yeah.
And then you'd be amazed at how much all that other stuff just works itself out. Yeah. It all works itself out.
If you have people around you that are making good choices, right? Pursuing their physical and mental health through good habits, you're going to do the same. You need a great habit to break a bad habit.
Yeah, you do.
You know,
right,
to build
right.
a habit, you need to break a habit.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of, at least that's what I found in my experience.
Yeah. Oh, and you need to accept the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable.
Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show.
What's going on, Eagles? I'm Joey, and this is the Fuel Hunt Show. Today, Drew and I are joined by a very special guest, a friend of mine, someone that is on a similar mission in life. And with his, we'll call it profession, with your nonprofit, a similar mission that we are on at Fuel Hunt. And so it's no surprise that we decided to join forces.
Yeah.
Right? So this is Josh Frank. You own Consequence of Habit, which is a 501c3 charitable organization, right? It is also Fuel Hunt's preferred and only nonprofit partner. Wow. And I also have the honor of being on the board of Consequence of Habit. So these similar missions have brought us together in more ways than one.
For sure. First of all, I want to say I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been in the works. Full transparency, I bailed on the last one like day before, which is a jackass move. But
All good.
Yeah. I'm excited to dig into it and how our two worlds kind of came together and all came around from the initial appearance you guys on the Consequence of Habit podcast, the shirt, and like you said, it's just the beginning though.
Yeah, just the beginning. So I was going to hit on that, right? So we were guests on your show. Yep. You have a show, an amazing show, where you speak to, people from all walks of life, right?
That's it. Like when we talk about habits, it's all inclusive. I joke around. It's like the most woke thing in the world. Like everyone has them, and they dictate your life. They literally dictate your future and everything about like it's the one thing you can actually control about your future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on the show, I've been on your show twice, right? So it's only fitting that now you're back.
Yeah. In this seat.
Instead, in the other seat. So you're not here to record for your show. You're here to record for ours. So we appreciate it very much. Very much. So why don't you tell us, let's dive right in.
Okay, let's do it.
Why don't you tell us about the beginnings of Consequence of Habit, how it started, why it started, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so I always want to be clear that I didn't like crack the code on habits, like all my good habits. That's not even why I started COH. It actually started because of my bad habits. I came to a crossroads in my life a little over 5 years ago where this one habit I had around alcohol was compromising so many different aspects of my life. So whether it's how I thought of myself as a father or as a husband, as an employee, like just as a person, right? So I had to make this decision, right? And I make a decision that I'm going to do something about this. Like people say, "Hey, was it that bad? Did you, because we have ideas of what people who drink too much look like."
Sure.
But the reality is, a lot of people, it's just this thing that they do. It's like this off ramp from life that they can just disappear for a short period of time. But in doing that, they make decisions they're not super proud of. So I'd made a couple of those decisions, and then over time, this facade had like, I got to do something about this. And then the hardest thing about any habit, especially if it's something that you've been denying for any period of time, is putting a line in the sand. So I made a change, and it happened right around the beginning. I'd been 1 year sober going into COVID.
Okay.
And this idea of our habits, like the things we do on a daily basis and what they mean to your life, like literally, what we put out in the world and then what we actually do are two separate things. So I started just talking about habits, not specifically drinking or drugs or just all kinds. Like, so I've had professional athletes, entrepreneurs, people from the recovery world come on and talk about their habits and the impact that they have on their life. And that just continued to grow. About a year into that, I said, man, this is going great. But I want to do something more. I don't want somebody to listen to an episode and go, that was a great episode, and that's where it ends. So at that point, the idea of COH as a 501c3 was born. I knew nothing about the nonprofit world. I don't know if I would have even had the energy to start it if I actually knew what went into it. Something I'm sure you guys completely get.
Blissful ignorance. Blissful ignorance, right?
So
you did it for the right reasons, and you didn't really know what you were getting into. But since you did it for the right reasons, you're able to persevere.
You're able to stick with it a lot more than if it was somebody else's. So we started doing workshops, speaking events, online courses, just where I had over 150 interviews of people talking about habits. Like, how do we take that information, synthesize it, put it into, a digestible form where people can not just, listen to an episode, but can learn a new skill or at least have a better understanding, awareness of what they're doing. And then a path forward. Like, how do we change? Because that's the hardest thing. Like, none of this shit is complicated. Like, we know what we're supposed to do, but how do we get from here to there and make those changes?
Closing the gap between the knowing and the doing.
Exactly.
When I look at consequence of habit, like what I see is awareness and I see action.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we know what we need to do, but a lot of times we're not taking the actions because we're not fully aware of how the habits are affecting us or those around us. You know what I mean? And sometimes we are aware, but we're not aware enough to understand the full impact.
Specifically speaking, like the relationship with alcohol, like you said, we have this vision or image of what an alcoholic or someone that has a bad relationship with alcohol is. And that's not necessarily always the case to have it be affecting your life. Like me personally, I felt like even connected to you and just saying that because I haven't drank alcohol in over 5 years, and it wasn't like I was an alcoholic. I liked to party. Yeah. And the one night I came from a friend's wedding and I was thrown up in the sink and my son was asleep in his bedroom. And I was like, if my son walks out, I literally was thinking to myself, like, if my son walked out and saw this version of his dad, like, what would he think of it? Like, would he be proud that I'm his father? And I just stopped drinking that day. Yeah. Well, and it wasn't like a big come to Jesus. I just stopped. I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah. And some people, it's just that, like, hey, is this worth it, right? And that was it, man. My kids played a huge part of this, and they weren't young, right? So that took a lot to say, hey, I got this thing and I can't stop doing, and I want to make a change. And it, and I've got a daughter in college at the time, so that was really that was a tough one because then you can't go back. Yeah, like a 3-year-old doesn't know any different, right? But if you say, "Hey, I'm doing something about that," and for me that was a 12-step, but for whatever the reasoning to put that out into the world is, it's scary for sure. Scary.
Well, you're admitting you probably spend so much time admitting that it's not affecting you, but when you take that step, you have to admit that it is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's
and then how do you ever go back?
Yeah.
Without like just this cloud over you, because everyone you've put it out to the world. So and that holds true for whatever whatever this thing. Like I said, for me it was alcohol, but I'm always first. People are like, yeah, well that's not me. I go, it may not be, but
there's something else.
There's something else. We all have picked our poisons, right? And society's pushing them down our throats every single day.
It's like our friend Joe DeSena, it's speaking to that point, like he says, like when you sign up for a Spartan race or do or anything of that nature, like post about it on social media and let people know you're doing it, because like then that's going to hold you accountable. That'll make you follow through.
Well, this community, and we're going to get into it more, but I think that's when we decide we're going to do something, you make a contract with yourself, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And when we don't fall through, like, that's a vote, right? Like James Clear says, like, every action is a vote for the type of person you want to be, or and if you're not following through with it. But when when I drank a lot, guess what? I hung out with people that drank a lot.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to make a change and you want to be held accountable, then hang out with people where those things just aren't, they're not kosher.
I think that's one of the things that keeps people chained to habits that don't serve them. The I'm going to say requirement to change your circle.
Yeah.
And it
That is
doesn't have
hard.
to just be alcohol. It can be
Anything.
other things as well.
Yeah.
If you have high aspirations or a different vision of who you should be as compared to who you are now, you have to audit your circle, edit your relationships, and that change. It's social conflict, and nobody wants to go through that. So it's one of the hardest change. It keeps people chained to their bad habits.
100%. I mean, I compare it to like a needle that's just been in the same groove on a record. That's people go, well, what am I going to do? Who am I going to hang out with?
Yeah.
And you can't, like, my advice is, well, something needs to change in your life. Don't worry about anything other than today.
Yeah.
And then you'd be amazed on how much all that other stuff just works itself out. Yeah. It all works itself out.
Yeah. One day at a time.
Yeah.
So when you decided you wanted to make a change, at that exact time, did you also say, okay, and I'm going to start the podcast?
No.
Okay.
No. There's some irony. So I was recording a podcast for a company called Killcliff, energy drink company, and they were fantastic. So they brought on myself and one of my good friends, John Kleck, and said we were both doing stand-up comedy at the same time. And John is a SEAL, and Killcliff was started by a SEAL, right? So they said, hey, would you guys host this podcast? And I knew nothing about podcasting, and I said, sure. So we started hosting this podcast, but at the time they were flying us, like we were down. They flew us to the Drinking Bros podcast, and I just gotten sober. Yeah. So the timing was terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm doing stand up, which I never thought I could do without a couple pops in me to loosen up. So
when you did the Drinking Bros show, did everybody know that you had made that change in your life?
Nobody. Minus my buddy John. Nobody knew. Yeah. So
how do you handle that when you go down there?
You do like it was that, and then they were just launching their CBD.
Yep.
So they had flown us down for a launch party down in Atlanta, and it's just.
Man, talk about being put through the fire immediately.
Yeah, but I was pretty fired up, like anyone, you know what I mean? Yeah. But don't get me wrong. I mean, to this day, I could go in and one of our biggest sponsors, Athletic Brewing Company, I'll go into a liquor store to buy a 6-pack, and full transparency, not everyone can do that. But for me, that works. But I passed some of those ones that used to be my regulars, and I go, I remember you. And I remember that feeling of that first one or two, so I still miss it. But so no, the actual the podcast didn't start for about a year after I got sober, and then the nonprofit a year after that.
So you were representative of Killcliff
for a short period of time. Yeah, that happened right before COVID, and that kind of went up in smoke quick.
Are they still around? We're big. We're Team Fit 8 over here. We have
all right. We'll scratch that. Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, so then it was an evolution, right? So it was evolution. It started with you.
It started with me.
Then evolved into a platform to help others with their habit building or changes. Yeah. And then into a nonprofit. Yeah,
because it's like the more I looked into. The more I explored habits, the more I realized like it's so much more than just this thing, right? I mean, like Jocko says, discipline equals freedom, and it's the truth, right? But when you start exploring your habits and you're aware of them, and I'm still like, to me, there's the beauty and the struggle of that, like trying to make change. and then fucking up and then going back like that. There's something amazing about that. But
I mean, any transformation, anything that's made, whether it's a natural transformation, caterpillar to butterfly, raw material to foreign material to structure, whatever it is, there's gnashing, breaking, bending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's ugly.
It's ugly.
Yeah,
and
it's ugly.
But
this idea that change is like, I'm going to make a change today. It's like this smooth transition.
No. And I think that's one of the, not pitfalls, but one of the things about social media, people see somebody that has already done a million steps, right? And they're like, that person isn't even the same species as me. So I can't ever get to that without realizing like, no, it's just these,
day by day,
every
day at a time.
They say like little hinges swing big doors. Like you got to make these little changes, but it's more than getting fit, or you wake up in the morning, you journal, you do whatever you're doing. When we aren't holding ourselves accountable, we're not our own referee. You're keeping score whether you want to or not, right? Like so. On the surface, I had all of my stuff together. Like I had have a great job. I have an amazing family. My wife's been so insanely supportive of all this. But at 2 a.m, I know how I feel about myself. Yeah. Right. And I know, and to Drew's point, I'm teaching my kids how to adult in a way that I feel like crap about. Right. Like so I could be great over here. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm showing them that this is what it means to be an adult. Yeah. And that to me included, getting home, having a couple glasses of wine, maybe a beer. And then to your point, once you stop these things, and again, this isn't about drinking, whatever that thing is, you put some distance between yourself and it, you start to really understand like the impact that it's had on your life, one way or the other.
Well, you have awareness, but it's a heightened awareness. It's clarity. So now you're seeing all the ripple effects. Like they're there before. But you're kind of clouded, so you don't really give. You know what I mean? You don't really care. Well, I can't say that. You're clouded.
Right.
But once that distance enters, then you have clarity, and you're like, especially like for me, like my relationship with alcohol is way different since we met. Indirectly has had, directly and indirectly has had. You and Consequence of Habit have had an impact on me changing my relationship with.
Stop it, dude. Stop it. You're giving me chills.
You have. So I think I'll pull up my little. I don't have 5 years in the game. You got 5 years in the game.
I wasn't like I'm going sober. I just stopped. I was like I'm just done.
I'm 6 months in, right?
Yeah.
But for me, since I met you, right, and I got that clarity through your story and your platform, I started to realize, and my relationship with alcohol from 2020, since around that time we met, started to change to the point where like I only drank a couple times a year. And then last year I was like, you know what? I'm done drinking. Like I'm not gonna, or this year I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not gonna drink this entire year. I put it out on social media, like we were talking about. Everybody was like, oh, you're sober now. This is great. I was like, wait, I just was trying to commit to a year, but now I'm sober. So now I'm full in.
It's funny.
Where I was going with it was, like, you start to, when you have that distance, you really start to, like, even with my kids, like, I see, like, wow, like, the old me that would have came home after a really hard day and had, like, I would have, like, 2 beers.
Right.
You know what I mean? But those 2 beers would change the way that I emotionally showed up for my kids, especially in challenging situations. Now, with the distance between that, I'm like, I'm never going back. I'm never drinking. Now, I'm like, wow, kind of like you said, I remember you.
Yeah.
I have flashbacks. I'm like, man, the old me, and I'm still not perfect. Like, do I yell and stuff sometimes? Yes, the little ones, you know what I mean? But the old me was much less emotionally regulated and would handle day-to-day things much differently. So that clarity is like so powerful. You know what I mean? So powerful, man. So powerful.
It is funny that to that point that alcohol is the only poison that if you reject it or just pass on it, people think like, oh, you're sober, you're weird. Like, is that everything okay? Like, it's really poison to our body and our minds, our lives. But
So I come from the first responder world. I'm a veteran, and in those circles, to not do it. I remember saying like, this dude doesn't drink. I don't trust him.
Yeah.
I don't trust him. Like, what do you mean you don't trust him? Like that, what the fuck? That makes no sense.
Even in corporate culture.
Of course, yeah.
Me coming up in corporate culture, and I came up fast in the corporate world, like, it was the same type of thing. Like, if we can slug it out all day at the office, right, and then go out and have a couple drinks afterwards, like, dude, I can't trust this guy.
Yeah, what are you, weird?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's this guy up to? Like,
He thinks he's better than me?
Right. Even if I had a healthy habit, after I slugged it out all day at work, I'd go to the gym.
Yeah.
That was weird. It's like, what kind of guy would want to come
Right.
out and have a couple drinks after we just battled all day?
Yeah.
So it's the same type of thing.
Yeah.
When I
it's
was
so
in
weird.
that corporate culture, I remember skipping happy hour or passing on happy hour, and I would get
ridiculed.
That even in itself.
my bosses would be so mad at me.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean you're skipping happy? Like, I'm gonna go with my family.
Yeah.
I just worked all day here.
The
I don't
term in
wanna-
itself, happy hour. Even the term in itself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I've had those conversations in the moment. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're still on this.
Yeah.
At the time, I'm like, bro, I'm 2 years in. Yeah, I'm still on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
But when I did start, because I was scared to put it out there to the world, I was like, I'm going to take a month off, or I'm going to take 2 months off. Or I'm going to do this for 90 days. And people are like, why? Wow, I'm just trying to get fit. I want to feel better. But the reality is, it was fucking my life up, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was so.
We talked about that too, privately, maybe the last time we were at HQ. I think that's like, and I'm no expert, dude, because I'm like cold turkey guy. Like, I'm not going through a program or anything like that. I'm just like cold turkey guy. So maybe I'm speaking out of school, but I feel like everybody that makes that decision goes through those waves.
You have to, right?
Like the people I know that are sober now, alcohol, drugs, whatever,
Yeah.
they went through the same waves where it's like, oh, I don't need this. I'll give it up for a month.
Yeah.
Then they prove to themselves they gave it up for a month. Then they go back to it because they're like, oh, well, now I've mastered it. Like, I have control over it.
Right.
The reality of it is, like, the thing that you're trying to control isn't the substance. There's something else that you need to exhibit control over in your life.
So, and
The
that's where I was
habits.
getting to, and that's the habits, right? Like, so this, when we talk about the exit ramp, right? The dopamine that we're constantly going after.
I love that analogy, by the way.
Yeah,
I
that's
love that,
right.
that off-ramp analogy, yeah.
So it's served to us in so many different ways. Like, I would say never in the history of time have we've been so inundated with dopamine-inducing substances, behaviors, technologies. And over that period of time, like we've learned to not feel, right? To not feel has become so easy. It's in my pocket. And in full transparency, I have a technology addiction for me is real. I'm not like, I used to be really embarrassed to say it because I'm like, that's for teenagers. Like, no. So that is a legit thing. And then it's like living in Florida your entire life. So you're used to warm weather, and then you go somewhere where it's just a little bit cold, and you're like, this is freezing. I'm uncomfortable. That's how I honestly think. We're the richest country in the world, and we have the highest rates of anxiety, depression, addiction, preventable diseases, and suicide. Like, that's not an accident, right?
No.
So
to that
by-
point,
by design.
the fact that, like you said, like, I could text anyone right now in my phone, and I guarantee I get a response in 30 seconds from most.
Yeah.
And me and Joey and I are both very conscious of that, and we're still bad with it. Like, we text each other back immediately when realistically we should maybe be.
Here's the double-edged sword, right? Like, it's that addiction that allows us to have the impact that we've had, all three of us, on the world, and our wider team here and your wider team, A Consequence of Habit. It's that, I shouldn't say addiction, I should say that ability, right? So it's like anything, it needs to be harnessed. Like, a healthy habit needs to be built around it, or it needs to be, needs to be harnessed.
To your point, I know we got caught up on the alcohol for, like, we demonized the alcohol. We just really just beat the piss out of the alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol.
I think I will say it's very relatable to our community.
I agree.
Super relatable. I talk to so many dads, like, even after I made that, like, I didn't come out and be like, hey, look at me. Here's all the dumb shit I did over the years because I drank too much. Here's how much I love to party. I didn't even go into any of that. I was just kind of like, hey, this is the only bar I'm going to hit. It's called a barbell. It's very cliche, but that's it. You know what I mean? How many dads from the community reached out and they were like, look, like, I've been, for lack of a better term, like circling this decision. And I'm like, look, dude, that's how you know you need to make the decision.
That's it. When people hit me up, they're like, "Hey, do you think I need to make a change?" And I go, first of all, that's not my place to say.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're asking me that question should probably give you the answer that you need.
Exactly.
Right. So
Yep.
it's clearly already had an impact on you. You've been thinking about it. And when we can make those changes and hold ourselves accountable, whether it be through refereeing ourselves or through a community, this is the part that I missed when I first looked into this or started researching habits. That brings a self-esteem that you will never get from your social media or your drinks or whatever, that reduces the need to want to take that exit.
Off-ramp.
Yeah. So
that's the crazy thing.
Right.
It's like what the off-ramp you're using, right? Like the turn that you're making, staying on this road is the thing that you need that will prevent you from wanting to go on the off-ramp.
it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah,
right? To feel.
Yeah.
To feel.
Well, I mean, you need a great habit to break a bad habit.
Yeah, you do.
To
Right,
build
right.
a habit, you need to break a habit.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of, at least that's what I found in my experience.
Yeah. Oh, and
know
you
what I
need to accept the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because things that actually bring true happiness, not pleasure, like happiness,
Fulfillment, purpose,
yeah,
happiness.
all of those things, they're going to be uncomfortable. And that's okay, but you got to know that going into it.
Yeah.
And then you got to have the courage to keep doing it.
I'll go out on a limb and say that, like, that was probably one of the Fuel Hunt messages that maybe clued you into who we were, what we were doing, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
The preferring of pain. Basically.
Yeah, that was it. So stoicism had been a big part of my sobriety. I saw your shirts. I saw the skull.
Yeah.
I got it right away. I reached out and like I was geeking out over our first conversation. Like I got off and I think I went upstairs and said to my wife, I'm like, I think I was a bit too much. Like you get excited. You see somebody else and you're like, let's do a shirt. Let's like whatever. Let's
we made it happen.
Yeah, you guys certainly did, man. And there's clear signs that you're onto something. And the relationship that we've built with Fuel Hunt was, to me, one of those clear signs. I'm like, all right, they're heading in a direction that I really respect. The fact that we're heading in the same direction and we see this kind of, I hate the word synergy, but some commonality in what we're doing. I was like, I'm like, that's it.
We've had a lot of people put distance between what we're doing and them, which sounds so crazy to me, to even say it out loud. I think it's just because we're speaking the truth. And sometimes the truth is hard to handle, but you never did that. And we are very grateful for that, for you recognizing, truly who we are and what we're doing.
So, and like I've had somebody question like, hey, because they didn't understand the meaning of a shirt, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to break it down and you go like, well, you got to look into it deeper. Like it's not, it's a little more cerebral than what you're getting. And then, then they understand it.
Also goes back to what you were saying with like the dopamine is everyone's taking everything at face value anymore because most people in today's society have the habit of scrolling through reels and TikToks and they're mindlessly just this, and they only take the time to ponder or even
It's called
accept something for the first 15 seconds. So that, like, you advising someone to think deeper about something is uncommon advice nowadays because
lost
no one's
art of
doing
thinking.
it.
Lost art of thinking. That's the way I say it.
Yeah, well, I get like, because we've gone through the same thing. They're like, this thing's called consequence of habit. Like it seems, why would you do that? We all know we have to like have good habits. And then I go back to like the statistics, right?
Yeah. Then why don't we?
Right? If it's that simple, it's just like, the first reading thing we did on the Rise, right, was Knowledge of the Bullfrog, and he ends almost every chapter with, it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, and like that's really, we want to add that clarity, but so when I describe COH, I describe the mission of bringing awareness to the impact our habits have on our mental health and our success. Then people, even if they don't understand the alcohol thing, I'm like, all right, pull your phone out.
Yep.
Pull your phone out. Look at, show me how much time you spent on your phone last month. And I compare that to like, that was my bringing the recyclables out on Sunday and hearing all the bottles clanging. And like I said, that's still something I'm struggling with. And I do think that technology, especially once we get AI, that we need a revolution on our bottomless need for dopamine and the fact that our attention has become a commodity. So whether in whatever form that is, and we need people that know how to think, know how to feel, and can put some distance between that stimulus and an action, and because they're trying to make that distance smaller and smaller as we sit there. And
that's the goal.
It's the essence.
And the real dangers in the youth and the kids come up nowadays, because I'm not the perfect parent. I try to be a good parent, but I let my kid have video games from an hour, maybe a day, if that, maybe a little less, a little more some days. The time in which he's off is like he's only thinking about getting back on the video. And the more you ask them, I took advice from a friend one time who was just a babysitter, and she was like, I just let my kids go be bored. And I was like,
it's a skill.
That's great advice. I was like someone way younger than me, you know what I mean? I'm like, that's amazing. And so so when he comes to me, he's like asking questions, like, what can I do? I'm like, go be bored, dude. Go figure it out. Like,
go build a fort.
Exactly. And that's so lost. And just being, I'm a young parent with every other parent we associate with is older than us, but that's so lost because they don't have even the energy to be actively involved. They let them go do iPads, video games, whatever.
Yeah. It's like, who's going to lead? What generation is going to lead us? Not just as a country, but as a people.
Yeah.
Like,
we've lost a sense of agency.
What generation is going to lead us? You know, it's scary to think.
I was literally watching a video of I think this is one of SpaceX's rockets returning from space and landing, vertical again and slowly on a pad in the ocean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we are so complex and amazing creatures, yet we're such monkeys at the same time that we can't stop doing these things that are ruining us.
Yes.
So, something's going to have to change. Otherwise, we're all going to be wired up to virtual reality and virtual reality suits 24 hours a day. They keep talking about the dangers of AI taking over. It's happening. It's here. It's already here. It's here, right?
I mean, that's why it's so important that there's people like you out there blazing the trail, and have been for a few years now, talking about habits and how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, the impact that has on us and them, all of those things. Because, talking about the off ramp and the highway or whatever, we need a full head of steam on that highway. We need to be blazing this trail, because the technology is going to continue to outpace us. I love the analogy, you're saying there are, you don't want to keep it so, say, alcohol focused, right? You're kind of like, hey, if alcohol doesn't resonate with you on this habit building journey, take your phone out. That resonates with absolutely everybody. Yeah.
Everybody. And if it's not that, then it's, people are addicted to work.
Yep.
Or pornography. There's all of these different things. And, the more we can be upfront and talk about it without this sense of a lot of people feel shame. over these things, but there's some of the smartest people in the world, these engineers, they're really good at what they do, and they understand our brains, they understand the loopholes, and
which is all common knowledge, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
That's why it's important for us to understand them as well.
Understand it,
Yeah, because if you understand it, it can't be used against you.
Yep. Look, in that world of alcohol, there's a saying that you never woke up and said, "Hey, I wish I drank more last night," right?
Uh-huh.
We don't want to be on our deathbed. No one's going to say, "Hey, man, I wish I looked at more TikTok. I wish I scrolled through more. I wish I drank more. I wish it's going to be the things that matter. Like, I wish I spent more time with the people I love."
And specifically the little things that matter.
The little
Yeah,
things.
the little things.
Yeah, those are the things that we're, we have a limited amount of time, right? So,
yeah, we don't know when the clock's going to expire.
That's
You
it.
know what I mean? That's the
right.
thing.
That's
So we
right.
have more. Our time is more limited than we believe it to be.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are just as many examples of that floating around that you can choose to take in and understand. But people are scrolling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're scrolling right by it.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
admit
It's
it.
easy to compartmentalize it and just go, just one more video or one more drink or one more, and then,
Yeah.
5 years down the road.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So much of I think it's a people don't believe in themselves. I think that's
Right.
what it comes down to. Like
Yeah.
they don't believe in their own potential, and that's why they have these habits that ultimately sabotage who they could be and the life that they really want to have. They don't believe in themselves, and that's where, from our standpoint, we started Fuel Hunt for a few reasons. Feeling alone was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And when you feel alone, you feel like your belief system is hollow. You don't have self-belief because you don't have people surrounding you, supporting you. So to me, that's why community is so important. It's almost the antidote to not just being alone, but allowing the world and technology to completely decimate your potential.
Yep.
Because if you have people around you that are making good choices, right? Pursuing their physical and mental health through good habits, you're going to do the same.
And you're going to build a connection. So you spent a hard day on the mat, right? You're building a connection with those people. You don't even have to necessarily like them as much, but when you do hard things together, we say, it's building connection through a shared purpose and challenge. You do things together, you feel a sense of pride about yourself and what you did, and you build connections with people, like-minded people. Maybe they share their values.
Sure.
And that, that has a compound interest. Like you guys have seen it, right? These things will change your life. It just isn't as instantaneous as the things that make you feel good short term, because those things, I used to say, well, most likely those things are, they shelf life and they're not going to be good for you. I haven't found any other examples of it not, right? Like everything that makes you feel good instantaneous with this artificial, not the dopamine's not artificial, but you put out to a world of posts and you wait for this feedback. You're putting the power of how you feel about yourself out into the world, right? Where if you start making positive changes, you don't need, that is coming from yourself, right?
Yes.
And you're right. The thought of change, a lot of people don't think that they're capable of. I never thought, even with the alcohol, that was just what I did.
Yeah.
It was just what I did. I didn't know I knew there was an alternative, but that didn't feel like that I was even capable
You
of
didn't
that.
believe it was. You didn't believe it was an option for
I didn't think
you.
it was an option.
Yeah.
It was
You
my
didn't believe it was an
identity.
option. Yeah.
Hey, I'm this IPA guy. I like really, it was my identity in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I tell this story. My son was little at the time, and they're talking about your parents' favorite food.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to kick alcohol's ass here, but my son
It's okay.
said,
It resonates, like I said, with the community.
my son said, my dad's favorite drink is beer, and everyone laughs, right?
Yeah.
Even though I laughed, dude, that one hit. That gets me. That'll choke me up even now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that one hit hard. So I'm like, I want it to show that you can do something different, and it's okay to say, I can't stop doing this thing.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do what it takes to make a change.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Brady. Look at Pat Brady. I mean, that guy. I sat there. I saw him train last weekend.
I was just with him Sunday.
Okay, so
Yesterday.
I guess it wasn't weird. It was last Thursday, and it was the 4th of July.
Yeah.
It was literally it was in the morning of the 4th of July, And I took a video of him training. He's rolling with the dude, and his son is sitting there watching him train, right? And you look at that guy's life.
Yeah.
And you talk about replacing habits. Like he'd said something like...
he's a different human. He's a different human.
He's completely...
not even the same person.
No.
Yeah.
And that,
he is, but he isn't.
Right. And that his son could be watching that other version of him and saying, hey, that's what it means to be an adult. Like, this is how you live your life.
Yeah.
But instead, he sees what he sees. Yeah. And it's beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful.
I actually thought of it yesterday because I walk into open mat, and open mat's in one room, sparring's in the other. So Pat's sparring, comes to sparring on Sundays. So I walk in, and the first thing I see is him on the mat on all fours, just like looking, like literally completely emptying the tank, looking like he could not stand up and like throw another punch. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he posted something in his stories like later on in the day, like, oh, call the ambulance or something. But talk about a guy that was arguably all in on one world.
All in.
All in. Fully in. You know, you say touching both sides of the habit spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And completely turned his life around.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And
completely turned his life
that's
around.
why I like to see.
Through the power of habit.
Through the power of habit.
Yeah.
And to see him, like the fact that there's a Fuel Hunt and a COH on this shirt brings me chills. To see him fighting with a COH logo under the Fuel Hunt logo on his shorts.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
literally just taking pictures of the TV and just texting him, like, where my ego, like, you know, I'm like, look at this, this guy. Like, so
he's been very vocal about why he's doing what he's doing. Like, he's not a young man. You know, he's now in bare knuckle fights, which are brutal, right?
That's insane.
But he's been very vocal about what he's doing and what he wants to show his son. Yeah. That, you know, kind of anything's possible.
Yep.
But like, no matter where his fighting career ends up, I guarantee his son is going to look back and say, you made the change from that.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's out there.
Yeah.
You've got it documented. He made the change from what he was to who he is now. And that's going to be the most powerful thing. He can smash people's orbital bones in the BKFC ring over and over again. He can become a world champ. But that change he made from who he was to who he is now is the thing that's going to inspire his son the most, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got about 25 ambassadors for COH across the country. Mm-hmm. All of them, thanks to you guys, are rocking Fuel Hunt. And there's some of them that are just animals, right? Like they Cameron Haynes' brother is one of them. Like, and he does, you know, runs a 250-mile race in a weekend. Yeah. And then
wild, dude.
It's amazing.
Yeah, wild.
But with that said, I'm just as impressed, like, by, I've told this story on our podcast a million times. So my wife and I will go out right by our house. There's a triathlon that runs at least once or twice a year. And I'll see these triathletes come by, and some of them have clearly been doing triathlons a long time. Yep. They've got everything. And then I'll see a couple of people that looks like they went to a big box store and bought, you know, a Huffy, and are slow, but they are putting themselves out there. And to me, man, I'm way more inspired by that. I see that, and I'm like, man, I think it's gee, the courage to put on spandex. That's, you know, like, and get on a bike and then go out in front of people like this, because their goal is more important than what everyone else is thinking.
Yes.
Man, I'm getting chills from that. Seriously.
Yes,
like
exactly.
It's awesome.
And one other thing to point out, an important thing is the guy or the gal with all the gear, you know, like the $7,000 bike and the thing, they were once the person with the Huffy.
They were the same person. They were the same person. They, you know.
And that's the power of habit.
That's the power of habit. Like, they may not have had to dig themselves out from the same place. Yeah. But it's those, again, it's consistency, man. Like, I heard somebody, I'm reading a book, and they're talking about you have to have the courage to change, right? And I've never thought of it quite like that. Like, it was always just the discipline. And this gets back to it being simple. Like, you have to have the courage to actually be willing to change, like you talk about around like different friends, putting out to your family members, doing all these little things where people are going to stop and look at you and go, what are you doing?
Yep.
Because they're used to this old version of you.
Yeah, exactly. It's ownership. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It's also interesting that we have this conversation after the podcast with FTV, my buddy Frank, who he talked a lot about just getting started and putting yourself out there in business was one of the hardest parts for him. But it's also interesting to think about his habits that he talked a lot about. So before most people are rolling over in bed, he's already done a mini workout, red light, and cold plunge before the day, before anyone even gets up.
Yeah.
And that just shows you the kind of person who's physically in amazing shape and also building a business that he's now proud of and a legacy that he's now proud of.
Yeah.
Versus 90% of the people in the world who would never even think to do any of those things that I just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, again, because he's accepted, I'm going to do, these are non-negotiables. I'm going to do them. I'm going to be uncomfortable. But what's more important on the other side is how I feel about myself, which builds confidence, and confidence builds more, and then you're able to do, I mean, look, you introduced me as Josh Frank on here. Most people know me as JT. And the reason is because I was apprehensive about putting all of this out there, because it was like, I had this other life. I had my professional life. I have, now, through like reflection, I've never been as proud of anything minus my family as I am about this. Yeah. So it's weird how these things were like, I didn't want to admit this. I didn't want to put it out to the world. It then becomes like,
that's where the courage comes in.
You know what I mean? And they say, like, the obstacle's the way. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, once you summon up the courage and you decide that you're going to make the change, you're essentially naked.
Oh yeah.
There's no more excuses. Can't hide behind anything. Yeah. People aren't going to shield you. You're on your own to a degree. You're on your own. Like, you are taking full ownership of where you've been and where you're going to go. Yeah. And that's where the courage comes in.
Yeah. 100%.
That's where the courage comes in. It precedes the discipline. Yeah. That's where it comes in. I like, for me with my girls, I always say that, I want them confident, curious, and courageous. Those are the three qualities I want in my girls.
Yeah.
Because those things, I believe, lead to consistency or discipline. So those three things, they're the three things that I try to instill in them by example and through my words.
Yeah. And Joe, I like your point. Like I'm not perfect. None of these things. Through our habits, we can make ourselves feel more authentic when we follow through. And I struggle with that every single day. But
in a way, that's how you know you're on the path.
Yeah, right. And so when I'm not feeling authentic, that always comes to the point that, like, I'm not actually following through with the things that I'm putting out in the world, or the contract I've made with myself. And that usually, and this was kind of the call to action that I say to people, is like, hey, what is this thing you don't want to do anymore? And I want you to connect how you're feeling beforehand to whether you partake in that thing or not. Because all of us could, you make a New Year's resolution and you wake up on the first, and you're great, right? But it's when things get hard and you don't feel good about yourself. You don't feel good about maybe something that happened at work. And that's where we go for those things that make us feel good short term. Which is it's a snowball, right? That which brings shame. Now you don't feel good about yourself. Well, a fix for that, and then and
how quickly we forget. We forget how we feel afterwards.
Right? And then how you emotionally regulate when you're not following through is when you start snapping at others. Right? You start, like I always say, like, I can tell where I am in my own head by how how much I am of a willing participant in some traffic altercations. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we're running, like how mad I get because I'm looking for the person who's probably feeling like I am. Yeah. And we're drawn to each other, just like
it's a litmus test. Traffic is a litmus test.
Yeah, right? Man, you're exactly right. Yeah. So, man,
is a litmus test.
We're like I said, we're complicated and simple all at the same time.
Yes, so, yes. So we've done some things together. We have the Habit Tee.
We got the Habit Tee.
We have the Habit Tee. Also, I should have mentioned in the beginning of the show, this is the F It bucket. So this money that you see in there is yours. So you might as well take it today.
Okay.
For consequence of habit donation.
I think I got to donate a couple times to that since I've been here.
I've been so I'll hold myself accountable. I've been slacking on enforcement. You tried to enforce it earlier with Frank. I slacked on enforcement. I'm back on enforcement.
All right.
But this cash is yours.
So
take it for consequence of habit and put it to good use.
One thing, Ken, our esteemed friend Ken, did. I don't carry my wallet in my back pocket when we sit here anymore because he let me know it's not good for my back. Like
I see.
Being unbalanced, having your wallet in one because he saw me take it out of my pocket and put money in.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't. I'll
tell Ken maybe you just keep his mouth closed. I'm just joking, exactly. Ken. I'm just joking, Ken.
No, all you have to do is put all the money in your front pocket. Just bills. Just
we
bills.
take Venmo,
cash,
so it's right.
Yeah, I'll just take a tally of Venmo
That's
JT.
I'll put a QR code right above
that. Yeah. That's actually a good idea.
No, you. So you guys have been, whether you realize it or not, have helped spread our mission. Well beyond probably than you know, right? Like it's been a huge part of us, and so we have we just finished. You guys' logo was on a Trek Across America. We tried to cover 3,000 miles in the month of June. We covered just under 4,000 as a community.
Nice.
And then we've got a breathwork cold exposure event coming up this weekend. Your guys' logo will be flown there. We've got a speaking event with Nick Lavery coming on October 5th. You guys will be represented. You were represented there last year as well. So, this partnership's it's a perfect fit for us. Listen, I see guys like Tim Kennedy wearing COH on their shirt because of you guys.
Yeah.
Like I see this shirt on Bedros. It blows my mind. The people I've seen with the COH on their back and
a lot of people have that shirt too.
Yeah, they believe in your mission just as much as they believe in ours. Like we're perfectly suited for each other, and you know how it is. Like when the right people team up, impact is maximized. So
that's it.
My famous, this is just the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Like there's so much more that we can do for you, and we will as we grow.
I'm excited. I think this is going to age really well. We're going to look back and be like,
I believe so. I believe so. Yes,
awesome.
I do. Yes, I do. So you touched on, we'll bring this in for a landing. That's becoming like a cliche.
I know.
I was going to make a reference, but I won't make a reference. So bring it in for a landing, right? You talked about some things that you have going on now. If you want, elaborate a bit on the event in October with Nick.
Well, I actually left one out. I want to make sure I hit this.
Yeah,
we have a 10-week Mastering Habits course starting August 4th. We've got one of the other board members is a retired Navy chief, just an amazing. You were talking about living on both sides of the habit spectrum. And this guy's really dedicated his life to helping others through mindfulness meditation. So he's developed I was reviewing it today.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
I saw the beginnings of it, and I was blown away.
And it's evolved, and I'm really excited about that. So that kicks off August 4th.
Nice. How can folks participate in that?
So you can register right on consequenceofhabit.org.
Okay.
We're excited. Part of that evolution is, like I said, just, we had the podcast, then we have the workshops. Now we want to expand the process of training the mind into change, right? Like, again, you can have a great one-day workshop and it's fantastic and it can really spark some interest, but we want to really build this foundation and help people kind of make those changes. So that kicks off August 4th.
Yep.
October 5th, Last year we brought in Nick Lavery. Nick Lavery is a Army Green Beret, lost his leg in Afghanistan, trained back up on a prosthetic, became the first above the knee amputee to like retake the test, get back on an active SF
And it's
team.
still active.
Still active.
Yep.
So he's been on Consequence of Habit. His episode on Jocko is fantastic.
Yeah.
What I think is important about people that have these amazing stories, there's one thing that to go through these experiences, but if you can't use that experience and communicate it in a way that connects with all different people, well then you're missing something. And Nick, I said it before, like, I don't care what you do for a living. You could be, a parking meter person or a fellow Green Beret. You walk away from that and you're like,
This is applicable to my life.
dude,
Yeah.
like I want to take on the world.
That's what you do so well too.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It would be very, I don't want to say easy, but it would be easy for you to have a sobriety podcast or you are now speaking to a much wider audience. Your impact is so much wider than what initially brought you to your journey.
I think it's like an onion, and I mean that whole thing hasn't helped out with communicating. That is harder when it's this broad. Like you and I, you've actually helped me kind of try and narrow that down. But I think we're getting better at it, and
for sure.
This has become way bigger than me and my story. So let's I just want it to be something that people can first see themselves in, and then be curious about maybe make some changes. So yeah.
So the event in October, tickets not on sale yet for that.
Tickets are not on sale. They'll be on sale probably within the next week or two.
Oh, okay. So by the time this airs, tickets will be on. Will be on sale. And where can the community snatch those up?
The link will be from our website. It's going to be through Eventbrite, but so you can either find it on Eventbrite, but if you come over to consequenceofhabit.org, you're also going to find other resources, just some articles written by myself or some of the other board members. All the podcast episodes will be there, and then all of the events we have coming up will be coming up. We've got a ruck up in Maine that we're going to be doing. We've partnered with something called Pumpkin Man. It's a big running festival. That's going to be September 8th, I believe.
Okay.
So we've got some stuff in the works.
So I mean, look, mission in action. You know what I mean? You're providing people with the tools and the training, right, to make changes, break bad habits, build better habits, right? In-person events, seminars, like you're cooking
trying,
gas.
man. Like I'm sure it's like your guys' experience. You learn what works and what doesn't. Sometimes those lessons can be painful, but they're part of the process, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well
and what
said.
you think won't work does work.
That's right.
That's the best part.
Many times. So you've shouted out consequenceofhabit.org a bunch of times. Where can most of the community knows where to find you, but for those listening or watching that are new to the community, where can they find you on social media?
Consequence of Habit, this is where the authenticity is. Like, you find us on Instagram. We're part of the machine that, but
I look at it as you're
it's a necessary evil.
You're a disruptor of the machine.
Right. We're trying.
Disruptor.
We're not real active on Facebook. Probably Instagram's probably where we have the most interaction.
Gotcha.
And then you'll find me on your guys' The Rise. So you'll find me posting things on there. And then as far as the podcast goes, every major podcast platform that's out there, we're represented in one way or the other.
Nice. That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
Anything else that we didn't cover that you want to touch on?
No, just a deep appreciation for both you guys, the entire team here. This isn't my first time being in headquarters, and usually you guys have been carte blanche and letting me record amazing stuff, episodes here. So just big thanks to you guys and the whole Fuel Hunt team.
Yeah, right back.
Likewise,
right back at
dude,
you.
likewise.
Right back at you. Our home is your home. So you're always welcome to come through just to hang or to record the show. And I opened, I think, with the gratitude that, we have for you and your belief in us. sometimes it's not super popular to believe in fuel hunt or messaging because of, like we were talking about, the way people just take things for face value and don't think. But you've been by our side since we've met. Dude. So thank you. Yeah, and again, you know, I touched on it a little bit, the utmost gratitude for you for some of the personal changes that I've made in my life.
That means a lot. Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, that was another good one. Good one.
All right, I'll leave the few with this. Always choose hard work over handouts. Always choose effort over entitlement. No one owns you. No one owes you. You're one of the few. Now let's hunt.
Like.